This is a North Africa Journal podcast. For terms of use, please visit north-africa.com.
Two separate raids in Africa over the weekend targeting two suspected terrorists. It was an extraordinary show of force by commandos in highly secret operations in both Somalia and in Libya. First, off the coast of Somalia, U.S. Navy SEALs slipped off a commercial ship and raided a terrorist stronghold. Within minutes, though, they were forced to abort their mission under heavy gunfire from militants. Then a day later, U.S. Army Delta Force commandos in Libya grabbed Anas Al Liby, a senior al-Qaeda operative hiding in Tripoli. He has been wanted by the United States for the 1998 U.S. embassy bombings in East Africa. Liby is now in U.S. custody.
So you have two separate countries, two operations to get two top leaders, one an al-Qaeda leader, one an al-Shabab leader. For more on this story, on the rising threat of terrorist groups based in Africa, we have Alessandro Bruno with us in studio. Alessandro is the deputy editor of the North Africa Journal. So Alessandro, is this an example of the U.S. stepping up terrorism specifically in Africa?
Good afternoon. Well, yes. I think what's interesting here is that Libya and Somalia are becoming much closer than they used to be, not geographically, but in terms of what the situation is on the ground. Libya is increasingly anarchic. The government had no idea what the U.S. was doing, and 3 years ago, when Gaddafi was still in power, such an operation would have been unthinkable. Also, Libya would have been in charge of apprehending known terrorists. Gaddafi was quite actually active in that. Somalia is still in a state of anarchy, although it's improving considerably. There is somewhat of a government, but the government controls a small area around Mogadishu. Most of the country is actually controlled by the Shabab. Really the vast majority of the country, right up to Somaliland. So there's still a lot to do. And in fact, on top of that, the raid was somewhat botched in Somalia. This may strengthen the Shabab from a moral point of view, let's say, call it morale point of view, because they can claim it, a tie is a victory. So it's a very interesting situation now.
We have a graphic that we're going to show our viewers that we've put together talking about Africa being the new front of terror. You've got three different groups here in operation. Take a look at this. You've got Shabab, as you mentioned, in Somalia. Kenya, we saw in the shopping center situation, also an attack in Uganda a couple of years ago. Boko Haram in Nigeria, and then you've got this al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which really encapsulates four different countries in northwest Africa. Is Africa really the new front of terror?
Well, this is a very interesting problem now, because not only Africa is a new front of terror, at the same time there is also a good story to be said in Africa. There are parts of Africa near these areas or even within it that are growing very quickly. For example, Ethiopia, even Mali, where the French were called in to fight off major al-Qaeda insurgents in the north. That is al-Qaeda in the Maghreb that you mentioned. So there is a good story and a very bad story. So it's like a fight for the future of Africa. Yeah, there is a fight for the future. And actually the migrant, the boat that sank in Italy off the coast of Lampedusa is also a reflection of what's going on in Africa. There is a number of countries have fallen into anarchy, namely Libya. And it's much easier now for migrants to get on boats and head off. There's one a day. That's just a reflection. And some of those boats are decoys for drug trade, boats that follow the same routes and follow the same routes in the desert with the migrants. That's one of the ties between terrorism in Africa and Colombian drug trade, particularly al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. Then you have Boko Haram, but that's a little bit different. I call it more nationalistic. Islam in that case is used as a way to organize nationalists of the state of Borno, where the Boko Haram is based. And that they want to form a separate state within Nigeria. There's also a Christian fundamentalist in the south.
But for all these countries and for all these groups, how do you fight terrorism if the root causes are things like unemployment, failed economies, a chaotic and lawless environment? How do you fix it if so many of these countries have those problems?
Well, the lawlessness allows these groups to settle and form to train and to expand, and they prey on that anarchy. Then, at the same time, they enter into competition with some of these new realities, these better realities, like Kenya, for example, or Ethiopia, where agriculture is being developed, where oil is being discovered. East Africa is actually quite a hotbed of activity these days. Ethiopia is building a massive dam to facilitate irrigation, which is going to really improve agriculture in that area. And you remember, Ethiopia was known for its famines. Well, that is a very old story now. Bono from U2 has no place anymore in Ethiopia. It's the fastest growing country in Africa. And you've got Kenya as well with potential oil. And as you've seen from the images of the Westgate Mall, there's quite an affluent local community. So these people, Islam becomes a challenge to that. And that contrast actually, I think, helps to recruit those who are left out. So there is a need for massive development, and now we're seeing this competition. I would even throw in this new. I know it's a stretch, but follow me here. The new Pope is making Christianity very popular again, and in Africa, Christianity and Islam were competing. Islam was winning. It was winning many more recruits. This new Pope is challenging that movement. He is appealing to third world countries. He is a very popular image everywhere, and I think that Al-Qaeda is, although they're active and they're launching attacks, I think militant Islam is showing its weakness by this continued focus on violence. It's as if they have nothing better to offer, so we'll just offer violence to contrast positive things that are happening on the side.
Great to get your take, Alessandro. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
This was a North Africa Journal podcast. Thank you for listening.